The last thing we'll do is to build extra widgets that has more scripts inside one of the widgets that you're building. So we're going to stick with what we have over here. I will need the record, so let's change this back to access the record, which is this one. And now let's push to the array to build some clickable containers. So I'm going to do a push variable. The name of the variable I want to push to is extra widgets. The scope is S because it's defined on the outside. And what I want to push is a new container with can click set to true and a fire script. And let's put a label inside this one. And for this label, let's use the row number in the for loop. So let's just go IAM container variable the row number. And we'll need the actual scope in which we want to replace it. And we have access to row number when the scope is SF. So I'll put that in over there. So first, let's see what this looks like when you run it. I'm in container 0 and I'm in container 1. So that works properly. If we had a situation where we now add actions to this clickable container, things get a bit more nested, obviously. And let's do just a set state to extra widgets again. So we're doing set states for extra widgets. Now clicking on this, we'll put it inside the container we have over here. So the container we built is now clickable, and clicking on it adds more extra widgets to this container. Now, if we wanted to access sub elements, if I can put it that way, we'll need our IDs again in our scopes. So what we want to do is I want to access, let's make it subdata, and use subdata to generate labels for each one of these as soon as the container is clicked. So what I'm going to do is the same thing again. I'm going to start with a map array. The value I want to map is something in record. So that's variable dot record dot subdata. Map2 is going to be essentially this. And then we can do our set states after this. Just call it this just to be more clear. I could have called it extra widgets as well because we're going to have a new script scope over here. So now if we run this, it will not work properly, and that's because the array we're trying to access isn't properly defined. We're trying to access variable.record.subdata, but we're inside a completely new script here, so the scope has changed. If you go look in your DevTools over here for script runner, we'll also see that it doesn't actually update in sign, but what we should see is a new scope. So just to illustrate that, I'll do a set variable over there. Call it temp. Just remove these for now, just so it doesn't crash. So clicking on this over there and inspecting our script runner, we'll see that this one, undefined temp, has been created over there. And in this case, it's undefined because we didn't specify an ID. Let's just call it SI for S inner. Then we see SI. The reason why it's undefined instead of a new unique ID, like you'll see in other kinds of scripts, is because a fire script's working a bit different than normal scripts. This is probably a bug in Opus and might be fixed in a future release. But I can illustrate that over here by deleting this one, that S we had on the outer script, and just inspecting this. So you can see this generated script 1 with extra widgets and triggered from. So this is now because we didn't specify S anymore. We do see S extra widgets because when we did the push variable, we specified a scope. All right, but back to the matter at hand. We have our fire script over there, and we just undo. Go. So the variable I want to access is in a different scope, and the scope it's defined in record is SF. So I can do scopedVariable dot sf dot record, and of course I will not need a scope accessor over here. Let's just give this an ID because we'll need one. SI. I will not need SI over there because when this action runs, this accessor is not in a nested object. It's on the main level. So now we've got our record properly, and that means we can access variables from inside it. So I can change the caption to variable dot record because subdata is just a bunch of numbers. So I can just go inject it straight into the caption, but I'll need then SI because this is in a nested object again. This accessor is inside props and props is inside map2. So that isn't working properly. So let's see what's happening. We have SI. Oh, so SI is the outer scope. It's not the inner scope. We need a scope over there. So it's SI has got SIM. It's the map array inside SI. And that's where this variable resides. So now we see 4, 5, 6 in both of them, instead of the ones we want to see being 1, 2, 3 in the first case. So why might that be happening? Let's see what we're doing over here. So this fire script will run and try to access subdata. Now, subdata is set every time this for loop runs. So we're setting the variable called record the first time, and we're setting it the second time. But when the click happens after the for loop has completed, meaning that this variable has been set a second time to the second value. So if we try to access that variable, let's just go inspect over there, we'll see that sf.record contains subdata 4, 5, 6. So now we're in a situation where we want to evaluate this sooner rather than later. So subdata needs to be evaluated sooner. And the way we can do that is actually just to set the value on the component so that we know what we're actually working with. So I could have done it over here. I could have set subdata on this container, which will then be this thing. And then I can change this to state.self.subdata. It didn't actually evaluate, and it didn't evaluate because I need my scoped accessor. So inside here, inside what's my current scope? So my current scope for this action is it isn't being overridden anywhere, so it should be SF, because then we don't need scoped variable anymore. We can just do sf.variable.record.subdata. So that does work. Another way you can do it is by not actually through not setting it on there, and you really shouldn't unless you really need to. Um, so what we could do is make sure that when we inject it over here, we have the right value, meaning we inject it in the right time. So I want to access variable dot record. We know that much. Now variable dot record is inside the scope SF. So scope variable dot SF. And when do I want to replace this? I want to replace this when the scope is SF, not when the scope is SI, because that's too late. That's when I'm clicking on this thing. So when the scope is SF, when this action runs, I want to immediately inject the value of this variable. It crashes, so let's go investigate this one. We can do that through logging this. So let's log this one and see what happens. We click. Alright, so we do have the right value, but we are trying to access this thing directly. This is what the value is. We just want subdata. So we had a bit of a fault in our logic there. We just put subdata in there, and now it should work properly. That's as far as we'll go in this lesson. There's really no feasible way for me to explain all the concepts to you and for you to grasp it immediately. This is something that you'll unfortunately get stuck on from time to time. When that happens, try for a little while to figure it out, and then after that, simply ask someone to explain the topic to you properly.